Hey everybody, DKeeverTV here. Let's get into it. So today we're going to go over some settings for Battlefield 6. My settings are going to be a little bit different when it comes to graphic settings, um, just because I stream and game off the same PC, but we'll go over the settings for several different scenarios. But first we're going to start off with accessibility. So in here, this is a little bit preferential, but a lot of what's in accessibility is going to play over into the other tabs in different settings. So just like audio, we got graphics in here, controls, controller, several different things, right? So let's just start off from the top, and we're going to work our way down through every one of them. So menu narration. I have that off. I have subtitles off. It just cleans up your game better. I think it looks better. It's not as annoying, always getting something popping up. Subtitle settings, if you want those, you can go in and change them. I don't really like them, so I just usually leave mine off anyway. Master volume, you just want to set that to something that's not going to break your eardrums. You know, I got mine set at 80. That feels pretty good. Don't mess with anything else right here as far as your other stuff. We're going to look at graphics. All right, color profile. This is a big one. All mine's already changed. Just go ahead and change color presets to custom. And then all you want to do is come in here. And if it's white, like this one's white, this one's green, go into the white, make it as white as you can right there, okay? So once you got that, go down to the next color. Like mine's green right here. All you're going to do is, if it works, go to your greens, right? Slide this all the way over to just a bright green. Just like that right there. And it is going to look so much better in game. A lot of these start out like really pale and dull looking, and they don't pop. They blend in with the surroundings, with the different foliage and buildings and stuff like that. So when you make these pop, it just all shows up a whole lot better. So highly recommend that. And I didn't change any of the colors. I just stuck with the same color, just made it brighter and more vibrant. Alright, color profiles. Brightness, I turned brightness down to 60. I think it looks a lot better. It doesn't blind you all the time. Camera effects. This is major. Like, you need to do this. Whether you're playing competitively or just for fun, it makes the game so much more enjoyable. World motion blur, turn it to 0. Weapon motion blur, turn it to 0. It's cleaner, crisper, it's not as realistic, but the game is so much more enjoyable. Infantry HUD motion, turn that off. Camera shake amount, as low as it'll go, 50. You don't want a lot of camera shake. Reduce sprint camera bobbing on. Chromatic aberration, however you say that word, off. Infantry crosshair projection, turn that off. Alright, controls, hold toggle. So, infantry sprint, toggle, you don't want to have to hold it, you just want to move quick. Double tap forward to sprint, off. I have crouch toggle sprint, I just haven't crouched, so you can, if you're crouched, you can sprint. Vehicle boost, toggle, crouch slide, all. Double tap, crouch for sprint, slide, off. You don't want that. Infantry, weapon zoom, hold, and a lot of these are all basically how the game sets it up, but interact and reload. I like prioritize interact. If you're near something, all you gotta do is tap it. You can tap it quick and move on about your business. If you want to prioritize reload, you can, but a lot of times I just find myself reloading when I'm trying to pick something up. And you get in the habit of just holding reload to reload. So all this is pretty much the same. Oh, and request revive. Change that to toggle, so if you are downed, you can quickly just hit that to hopefully get the word out a little bit better and keep you alive longer. Alright, controller vibration. I turned mine off. Ain't nothing more annoying than a vibrating controller. You can just turn that down to 0. Doesn't really matter. Vibration mix. If you turn it down, it doesn't really matter because you're not using it anyway. Chat. Turn this off. Both of these. Incoming text, chat as speech. You don't want that. Tutorials. I turn tutorials off, in-game tutorials off. If you don't know the game, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you just like a little helping hand, leave them on, but it's pretty self-explanatory, so if you want to turn those off, it's not going to hurt anything. Hints. Vehicle control hints off, action prompts off, peek hint on, ping hints on, vault hint off, mount hint on. The mount hint comes in handy because sometimes you just can't mount on something. Alright, now those are some key ones. I'll play over into a lot of this other stuff. Let's jump into gameplay. Invert all vertical look custom. This is my setup. The only thing I leave inverted is flight. So I don't want to be inverted while I'm driving. I don't want to be inverted while I'm in infantry, which is just your first person. I have a hard enough time aiming and shooting as it is. I don't want to do it inverted. You know what I mean? So copy that. The gunner, I don't like it neither. Like I said, the only time it really plays into feeling natural is on that flight aircraft. Hold toggle. We just went over all these and accessibility, so they're the same. Infantry, aim sensitivity. I run a 40-20 on here. I don't play on mouse anyway, which 20 is really slow, so I just leave it there because I play on controller. But I run my infantry aim sensitivity at 40. Double tap forward sprint off. Crouch toggle sprint. We see a lot of these we already changed. Vault over sprint on. Sprint door bash. Please turn that on. It makes life so much easier. Parachute deploy, skydive insertions. I got roll camera in landing roll. I like it. I think it looks cool. If you don't like it or, it disorients you, you can just turn it off. Mount type, siding up. Breakout instant, mount combo. Peak type, siding up. Interact and reload. Prioritize interact. That comes from accessibility also. Vehicles. So I copy vehicle sensitivities over pretty much. So vehicle aim sensitivity is 40. You don't want it changing a lot when you're going from doing one thing to another. You want it pretty consistent. Helicopter control assist, leave that on. Them things are a nightmare. Infantry aim input curve. I messed with this a good bit. The thing that feels most natural and feels most kind of like Call of Duty-ish is the BF1, BF4. I'm a Call of Duty guy. I've never been a big Battlefield guy. And not that I just didn't like the game. It's just, I grew up playing COD. I haven't enjoyed playing it in a while. I think it's in a pretty bad state. But the mechanics and the way the game functions and feels when it comes to a first-person shooter is probably the best game ever made. That being said, taking that aim input curve and trying to match that's a pretty big deal. And if you can do it in here, I think it's a plus. So like I said, BF1, BF4 is a solid choice. I don't mess with any of these. Just leave these on all 100, just standard, input curve standard. The vehicles really don't play a big difference in that. Campaign, we're not going to get into all that. That's just all preferential. Controller. Alright. There is 1,000 different settings in this, and it makes everything so confusing. I mean, there's so many settings in this, and rightfully so, because there's a lot going on in this game. But it can be quite daunting, right? So, we're going to start off with infantry, control settings, buttons and controls. A lot of this is going to play over into the rest of it. So, set this up right, and, a lot of it, just make sure that it copies over to the rest of these. Control settings. Like I said, I'm running 40. Turn off your inverted look. We've already turned that off in accessibility. Field of view. I like 115 on here. 120 I think is too much. These maps and areas are just so big. I think it opens up too much, because in Call of Duty it's nice to have that 120. You're generally tighter quarters. The maps don't always seem quite as big and open and daunting, or as much going on per se visually. In here there is, so 115 and even arguably 110 feels pretty good. I may switch it back to 110. I was kind of flipping back and forth, but right now I'm at 115. Vertical aim ratio sets at to 56. Uniform infantry aiming on. Zoom sensitivity coefficient 178. Aim assist, turn it all the way up. If we got it, take advantage of it. You know what I mean? And like I said, this is all on controller. Infantry aim input, we already went over. Stick input, you just want to copy, pretty much, right? So if you flip through these, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. But I just run in that because your acceleration, if you set it to 0 on any of them, it's going to be the same way. Infantry sprint, I've got that set to toggle. If you go to hold, it's alright, but if you accidentally slip up on holding it, there's a chance you're going to get caught. And I don't like it. Like I said, you're going to slip up some point or another, and then you're going to get caught. Off, sprint. So this plays into a pretty big thing too. So these, when the game loaded for me, these weren't mapped. So my sprint button in the beta was mapped, but a different button. Anyways, going to these, I run tactical on Call of Duty, and I got an elite controller with paddles. So I run tactical. It works out well for me. I run sprint, just left joystick pushed forward. Slide, I mapped right joystick pushed down, which I have these on paddles. And then, if you get into all your pedal mapping and stuff like that, depending on what controller you're using, that matters. But whatever you're used to playing on another shooter, whether it's Battlefield or whether it's Call of Duty, just match that. You want to try to keep it the same. And what's nice about this is we can map these in game versus like Call of Duty. So, if you like the way it's mapped in Call of Duty, just copy it in here. You can pretty much do anything. Zoom. Infantry weapon zoom hold, all this is pretty much the same. Infantry zoom aim sensitivity, I run a 90. But now for zoom transitions, for as far as concerning sensitivity, I start out with your 1-bys at about 85. And every 3 I bump them up 5 until we get to 100 at 4.5. Now, I can say this is okay, but what I'm thinking about doing is taking these 90s a little bit longer and then stretching these 95s out, because you got essentially at a higher power zoom, it's going to take you a lot longer to get it across area as far as glassing it goes, to be able to see anything or to get on something quickly to make a shot. So these work out well. That doesn't quite match up as good with how I've got it set up in Call of Duty, but it's pretty close. And like I said, I may stretch out these 90s and 95s a little bit to about 6-by probably. So maybe stretch out 90 one more and 95 one more, and it might feel a little bit better. But right now it's working. Parachute, auto deploy, skydive, interact and reload. We already went over that about 3 times. Like I said, a lot of this stuff comes over from accessibility. Skip, revive, hold. Don't put that on tap. You'll find yourself, dying when you don't want to all the time. Mount, breakout, instant. Mount, top, side and up. Mount, presets, combo. Peak, top, side and up. Gyro, you want enabled always. Infantry flick always, and you can play with this a lot. I don't really use it a lot. I know it's going to come in handy, especially as people figure the movement out and how to take advantage of it, but right now I'm just kind of leaving that alone. Infantry, the buttons we already went over. I only went over on 2. So like I said, we got them set to custom. But the only ones I changed, like I said, at Match Tactical, was I did sprint and slide, right? So, but you can go through here and map these however you want. Now, whenever you go to map them, it'll pop up that something's already mapped in that spot. But if it's something stupid, don't worry about it. And a lot of times it will be. And some of the things when you're hitting that button, they won't do anything because, you know, you're not going to be in a menu or you're not going to be in a vehicle or a gunner or something like that. All right. Like I said, on these, all you want to do is go over, and just like I said, they should follow over for your aim sensitivities and stuff, and that's what's important. Your 40, your vertical looks and all that, you already changed in accessibility. So just make sure they went over, and they should have, so you shouldn't have anything to worry about there. Mouse and keyboard, I'm going to let you guys down. I don't play on mouse and keyboard. If you do, you know what you're doing as far as your controls and what you want. Go by, set your keybinds, set your controls, your sensitivity. You up and running. Like I said, I don't mess with it. Sorry if I let you down, but I cannot do it. I've tried, and I just gotta stick with a controller. Graphics. This is where it gets interesting. Console, it's pretty simple. Go through, set it up, what makes it look good. PC, there is a major issue with this game, like a couple of the other Battlefields, to where you're maxing out CPU usage when you're really not needing to. I don't know why. It's like the game doesn't realize how many cores and threads you have, so it just keeps taking till it can't take anymore. But like I run a 7800 X3D, so arguably one of the best CPUs, right? Now the issue with that is just running this game on medium, high, or quality, it was pegging out my CPU. GPU was fine. My 9070 XT was just, I mean, it wasn't bothering it at all, but my CPU was maxed out. And my GPU was waiting on my CPU. So I have a YouTube video, another YouTube video set up. So basically there's a command script you can go in a notebook file, save it as a .cfg, and fix the whole entire thing. And all you're doing is telling it to basically realize what it has to work with, and then it doesn't try to take all of it. I don't know why it works, but it does. I stayed up till about 3 o'clock in the morning on the day of launch trying to figure out what was going on, and I found it. You know, credit to whoever come up with it. I found it in some old forums and threads and stuff. So, but it does work, and the game runs so much better. I was pegged out 100% CPU usage. It dropped me down to, if I'm not streaming, it dropped me down into the 30s. Now, you know, of course, in streaming and everything else, I'm running around 60s, you know, as far as percentage usage. And this is with the settings that I have. Now, if I'm not streaming, I can turn all this up and it runs beautifully, but all this is going to be dependent on your individual PC. Now, the nice thing about this, you know, you can set them to high or low or medium or anything, but I like customs because you can go through here and map out what matches your system. Your biggest things are going to be your textures. Keep your textures high. You'll keep a sharp image, especially with sharpness. And then if you're running, you know, AMD Adrenalin app or anything to do with NVIDIA, you can go in and affect those, you know, 60, 70%, whatever you want to scale it to. But like I said, I use the same PC to do everything. Stream, game, all of it. Now I've been playing with these. Volumetric quality, right, is not affecting my CPU at all for whatever reason. Lighting's minimal. Local light and shadows pretty high, and it says high on here. Sun shadow quality is a big one. Now I leave that on high because it did not look good any other way. But now this being said, you see what I got set right here. High, high, medium, medium, high, low, low, high, yada, 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 right? You can go through and look at all this. I've tried this, and then I've set everything to high. It doesn't make a difference visually that I can tell. Now, it makes about a 10% difference in CPU usage, I went through here and changed all this to high, and it really doesn't make a big difference on the GPU side of things. So, whatever your PC can run, if you're just gaming and you can run it, run high, or, run ultra or overkill. You can do whatever you want. I can run ultra on all of it, just gaming, and I'm fine. Like I said, it's individual PC specs. The biggest thing in this section is you want to turn off screen space reflections. You're going to look at a window, or you're going to look at water, or you're going to look at something that reflects, and you're not going to be able to see through it. Turn that off. Reflection quality, you do want on high. Now, that's a little bit different. That's things like sights, things that you can't see through that are reflective. Those do play in pretty good, puddles and things like that. So anyways, go through here. Like I said, this is visually pleasing, and it's, like I said, I'm running like 30% CPU usage with this, and like 50 something percent GPU usage. And I can turn it up a lot, but like I said, I game and stream on the both. I'm encoding on the GPU side of things, so I'm kind of limited to how hard I can push it and stream at the same time. But this looks fine. You can turn it all the way up, but really, unless you're just studying the overall graphic experience of it, it's not that crazy. And like I said, then I got a frame cap at 130, but we'll get into that in a minute. World brightness 60. Advanced here. Run a frame limiter. Okay, so even though you're setting your monitor at 180 hertz or 240 hertz or 165 hertz, whatever your monitor is, the game, for whatever reason, doesn't like to hold that steady. So if you come down through here, you're running a 180 hertz monitor, right? But if you do not set a frame limiter, you will check it, whether you're watching an AMD Adrenalin or whatever else, you will check it spiking over. And all you're doing is wasting CPU and GPU usage, especially the frames. You're killing your CPU. So I have a 180 hertz monitor. I don't run it. I don't think you can tell a difference visually in 130 to 180. I really don't. But I run 130 because it keeps the usage. It stays at 130. It doesn't fluctuate. I can turn it up to 160, and I might float around to 145 to 160, just because, like I said, I'm streaming and gaming. Now the 130, it doesn't move, and I think as long as your frames are not going up and down or fluctuating whatsoever, I think that looks better than if you're trying to push a lot of frames and you're losing a little bit of smoothness and stuttering. So to prevent that, just set a frame limiter and set it to whatever it runs constantly and smoothly. The game will look and feel a whole lot better. Resolution, don't mess with that. A frame limiter, we just went over. Dynamic resolution scale, turn that off. Run anti-lag on whatever GPU you're running. Upscaling technique, FSR, scaling quality. You can do balanced. I think quality runs better. FSR, frame generation. You can run this if you're not streaming, but streaming it causes some issues, so I don't run that personally. Performance overlay. These simple ones, nobody's hardly going to pay attention to that in the upper right hand corner unless you're working on something. It's a nice tool though. I wish COD had something that detailed. Extra, getting into it, and advanced. Alright, I'm no computer engineer, so I don't really care to watch all that, and who wants to play a game looking at that? But like I said, if you're trying to test stuff, this is perfect. But anyways, I just run that on off, and then I run my frames, I do run out of my Steam app. Alright, camera settings, 115, we already went through all that. World motion blur, we already went through all this stuff in accessibility and reasons behind it. Turn off your film grain, turn off whatever that word is with a V, it doesn't look good. Aberration, turn it off. I run borderless because I'm streaming. If I'm not streaming, run full screen. It looks better. But like I said, it's easier for me to run borderless when I'm streaming. VSync, turn that off. It doesn't. Just doesn't. I don't it tears. I don't know why, but um, if you're running a frame cap, you don't want to run it anyway. Show HUD on, HUD motion, all these on. The only thing I turn off here is the infantry HUD motion. It gets in the way. Icons and indicators. This is all pretty much the same. Chat visibility when active. Chat settings you can go through here and edit, but I pretty much just leave all that as is. Audio. We already went through some of these. 80, 100. Music, 0. I hate listening to the music in video games. I really do, especially sitting at the menu. It just gets annoying, so I turn it to 0. Leave all these up. You can turn them down if you don't like any of them. Hit indicator, make sure that's turned on. Sound system, honestly, stereo sounds great. I can hear everything really well. The footsteps in this game is great. Whatever they've done, Call of Duty needs to figure it out and copy it, because the footsteps in this game are absolutely amazing. They're not too loud, they're not too quiet, but the big thing, you can tell what direction they're coming from. You don't just hear elephants stomping around for no reason. You can actually tell where they're coming from. I got voice chat on. I turned voice chat down a little bit. Microphone, like as you can see right here, just run an open mic. If I'm talking, I'm not going to hold text or and whatever it's called. I'm just gonna run an open mic. I'm not gonna run push to talk. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm sorry, it's late and it's been a long day. Push to talk, I start talking and I forget that I'm not pushing the button. So then I wonder why I'm talking to myself or nobody wants to talk to me. So yeah, just run an open mic. External output off. Like I said, this is all pretty much basic. Gain I do turn off, and like I said, if you're running a mic setup, you don't want all that on anyway. It's going to conflict whatever you got your mic set up. Leave all this as it is. Subtitles we already went over. Radio music, that's kind of cool. I'll do leave that on. Like if you come across a radio in the game, it's kind of cool. Just to, I don't know, it adds character to the game, I guess you could say. So setup and install and all that. If you're streaming, turn these on whatever you need. Streamer mode off. I leave it off. What that does is it gets rid of some like copyrighted music and changes the names and stuff like that to where people can actually see it. But I play with a lot of people that people like to know or realize, so I just leave that on. And then the copyrighted music, for me, it really plays whenever you get into like YouTube and stuff like that. So, minimap. This is a big one. Set it to large. It's not changing, if you take a small square and make it bigger, it's not making everything in that square bigger. It's increasing the area that you can see. So, set that to large. Copy this stuff, and you'll be able to see a lot more on your minimap. Extras. You got a QR code. You need help, scan it. I ain't done it yet, so if you scan it, let me know where it takes you and if it's any help or if it's a helpless QR code. So, that's the biggest majority of it all, guys. And like I said, on PC, it's really going to come down to individual preferences and whatever your PC is spec'd out at. But if you're having CPU usage problems, check out my other video on CPU usage. It's going to help you out a ton. Like I said, I went from 100% down to 30. It's a big difference. But overall, guys, I'm happy with the settings. I'm happy that we have a pretty generous amount of stuff to play with. I think, some of it is a little overkill. But the complexity of the vehicles and the mechanics and the different items in the game versus COD, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. So do I think we need all of them? A few of them maybe not, but most of them we do. And it's nice that we have the options to change them, that we're not just stuck with whatever they gave us. So anyways, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.